real estate is obviously long-term investment in nature. And, we always go back to try and understand what are the drivers. Fundamental about it is demography. So growth in population, growth in urbanization, that is what is driving demand. I think it's not enough to think of just demand. It's also to look at what is your addressable market and what is the level of supply in the market. So that's the lens in which we always look at the opportunities. And this lens is what you can apply to the various sectors in any market. I think one of the key things that's very important to us is, data. A good understanding of what the demand and supply dynamics is. Many years ago, when we started investing, we had to do a lot of proprietary data development to fully understand what we are doing. And to be candid, that's one of the key reasons for the success of what we've done. If we're going to place a mall in an area, we will actually have consultants do a drive round, have an estimate of the number of people that can actually use this mall, the sizing, what is the spend, how much will the retailers that use the mall be able to afford. We've invested in data centers. We recently expanded our data center, and we're looking to actually build out more in terms of, continue to invest as well as expand our existing data centers.
As a player in this industry, you need to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. You need to understand what you're good at, and I think that's something that most people do not analyze that critically. Some people are very good at selling property. Some other people are good at building property. Some people are good at attracting investment to property. I don't think we should try and do everything alone. I think we need to collaborate more and focus on our strengths. We are seeing a change, in the way people live and the way people work. COVID-19 has made it very clear to everyone that you don't necessarily have to go physically to work in order to achieve your corporate objectives. And we are seeing that in the types of products that are being developed. I was speaking to a friend some months ago, and he said, at some point, people were looking at 2-bedroom apartments as the sweet spot. But after COVID hit, people started thinking, maybe I need an extra room as an office, and then immediately from 2 beds being very hot, it became 2-bed plus, a study being very hot. And we all need to just respond to the market real time. We've also seen changes in asset classes that people didn't used to pay attention to, like logistics, industrial. And given that people now need to distribute medical products, from vaccines to cold chains and things like that, these are areas where I think investors can begin to look at to be more efficient.
The gateway city indices, if you look at it, has always been progressive. And right now, the most profitable, so to say, in the Lagos environment is this Lekki Ekpe axis, because it has a lot of potential for development. So there's always growth there. And even right now, you can see that there are a few changes in terms of the kind of opportunities, particularly in residential real estate, that is coming up there, and quite a number of other types of uses of real estate. Now, one of the drivers and the key drivers of any development, real estate, forget whether it is commercial, residential, or whatever, is infrastructure. Sure. In this country, in this economy, what we depend more on in terms of our transportation system is just road. And that's why everybody has a car, or 2, or 3, and we are not looking at the real transportation system. If you look at most of the estates you see, most of the private estates you see, I don't know if the approvals were done that way or the developers decided to do it that way. You find out that the roads have no provision for things like walkway in some cases. by this time around, we should be talking about, let me say, low energy or possibly green energy based transportation, especially having spaces for bike riders on the roads. Nothing like that in most of the estates. In fact, the roads are so narrow, even the one government is building in some axes, you find that they'll be so narrow that you can't have two cars practically pass beside themselves or make a U-turn where there's a provision for a U-turn. So we need to rethink what we are planning, and we need to be expansive in our plan that, look, we need rail here. We need other forms of transportation here. The water transportation has been good in some aspects, especially when you're talking of what Lagos has done with the transportation towards Badagry. But there's a lot that needs to be done to improve on that.
I'm aware that Lagos State waterways are very efficient. They put very effective means of transport via the waterways in place. However, you see very few people plying that route. They'll tell you, oh, why would I get on the waterways? I'd rather get on the road. I'm fearful of the safety of the boat and all of those. So the government should ensure that these means of the waterway means of transport is well equipped, and there are measures in place to protect the citizens. Because why would I get on the water and my fear is, oh, the boat might capsize because the boats are not well maintained and all of those. So yes, the cultural issue, and it's also the government has a major role to play with regards to ensuring that those infrastructure that you've put in place are well maintained and they're effective.
I see that the trend that we see in Lagos now is that a lot of developers are building escape communities, right, where everything works. So the roads are not good. The road in my estate is fine. There is no park, around Lagos. We have a park in my estate. We have a swimming pool. We have this. We have that, right? What does this really do to our consciousness as people in the real estate community?
Inclusive communities are what people want. People want communities that limit their need to commute. And ever since COVID happened, most people now want to live and limit their transportation needs. However, I think this is where government then has to incentivize developers. So what other societies sometimes do is that when you're creating such inclusive communities, they actually incentivize you to also create social housing. So you create, as a developer, there's no incentive for me to spend billions of naira building a community and then going to fix a shanty next to me. But if government says to me, okay, if you build your community, for us to give you approval, you've got to fix this shanty next to you, and we'll also give you this concession, or we'll give you this rebate, then I have an incentive. And then as a developer, I've also then got to begin to understand that there's a social value to investing in the community around me. And that's the thinking that I think needs to happen for us to begin to then create a truly inclusive Greater Lagos.
We are moving into a time where a lot of what we are doing is being controlled by technology. And as a result of that, there now becomes a requirement to store a lot of the things that we're doing. So if I'm trying to teach this to a kid, so I would say a data center is where all of our data, which is now going into a cloud-based system, is stored. So if I'm an organization, my whole accounting system could be cloud-based, where I don't have any physical server in my office, but I can log in anywhere in the world, I can do my transactions, I can check what is going on. All of that is now cloud-based, and they are stored in data centers all over the world. For many years, when you call a call center, maybe you're in the UK, for example, and you call a call center for any service that you're using, your telephone line, the people who are speaking to you are speaking in India. This trend has been going on for years all over the world. And I think what is happening now that we're seeing is that it is now becoming obvious that, hold on, why is this not happening in Nigeria? Why is it not happening in Africa? And people have just discovered that, look, we can make this thing work. If telecoms has been able to work one way or the other, then all these other services like data centers, there's no point using power as an excuse. It can work. And, with people are always looking for new frontiers. So India is saturated. The world is looking for the next place to move, and Africa provides a perfect opportunity for data centers. The same thing with logistics parks.
These logistics parks provide international standard warehousing for everybody from SMEs all the way to multinational companies and everybody in between. So I'll give you an example. One of our customers in Ghana is a homegrown Ghanaian company that packages Ghanaian food as simple as gari, cassava, and those kind of things, and then packages them together, exports them out of the country, makes their money. They started from 500 square meters, and they've ramped up to over 5,000 square meters now. That's an SME. A multinational company, such as a data center, can come in there and require a specialized warehouse that requires specific temperature settings for the equipment that they're going to have in there, specific floor-to-ceiling heights, specific dock heights. That level of complexity is also what you can have in a logistic park. When COVID hit, the demand became even more significant and important because people couldn't go to work, unfortunately. People couldn't go to malls, unfortunately. But people were sat at home and were on their phones and were clicking and buying and doing things. So businesses were still moving. The logistics bikes were still considered as essential services, so they needed to get things from A to B. All of these things needed to be stored in a warehouse. So the demand is there, and the demand is growing. I would say we've been very, very successful. The occupancy rates and the take-up ratio that we've experienced in Nigeria completely blow our mind. I read an article yesterday that says investors in Kenya are actively seeking warehouse development opportunities because they realize that the retail market is tapped out, the leisure market is tapped out, the grade office space is tapped out. Where's the next frontier? And Africa, Nigeria specifically, is the final frontier.
The pandemic has really shown what it means to be a resilient business in one way or the other. Funding and liquidity levels remain quite a significant part of what is required to ensure retail spaces or retail assets can ride the storm. The flexibility to also be able to relate to retailers and to be able to address their issues as they come in play has been very important, especially on their own individual liquidity levels to be able to sustain the long stretch of the pandemic. I don't think anybody envisaged that we would have a scenario whereby we would have stretched for that long. So it's been a challenging period, but it's, level of naira liquidity within the system is the only way to ensure that sustainability on the long term, especially for those of us that are Nigerian entities and are not Nigerians and Nigerian entities that are here for the longer haul and will remain so for the longer tenure. So those are the main critical aspects from my own perspective as to what has been critical in ensuring that we'll be able to ride through the storm.
So yeah, I would say, spend time in the market, research the market, understand the market, and then slowly take your time, before you actually make new investments. And then, make sure that, you make good long-term investments in the market that you enter and be committed to the market for the long term. You got to understand that things are going to change from a politically and a macro, and even now we've seen from a pandemic point of view. But all these things goes in cycles, and you're got to be able to sit through them for the long term.